Hey, what's up, guys? I'm happy to be with you here yet again. And I'm going to tell you one of these things, one of these reasons why it's kind of important when you're doing a replay to sort of take your time about it, to think a little bit about what you're doing and about what's going on. I talked before a little bit about autoplay, why I don't like it so much, and why it's important, I think, to focus on what really happened in real life. And one of the reasons why is because you'll run into things that you didn't really know existed and you really didn't know happened, right? So I'll give you an example of this really quickly. I just finished playing a game that you probably, hopefully, just watched because I just uploaded it here today. The Red Sox went over to Detroit to play the Tigers, and I noticed while I was doing the lineups that Dom DiMaggio was missing. He was out of action. I thought, that's interesting. I wonder if he's injured or what's going on. So the first thing that I did, I'll show you what I do when I come across games like this. First thing I did is I went back and I took a quick look over here at our good friends at Baseball Reference, and of course I have to move this over to the side. All right, so this is under the Dom DiMaggio page. What I did is I went over to game logs, batting, and then 1949. You can see the information here for every game in the season. Not 100% complete, and you can see that some of these games, they don't have the full play-by-play, right? For like this game, the Red Sox against the Yankees on April 24th, I mean, we can look at the box score of the game, and it'll just give us a basic box score. We don't have a certified play-by-play in there. Makes me a little bit curious, actually, that a Red Sox-Yankees game in Boston would have no play-by-play account. That's a little bit odd. I bet we could find one somewhere if we looked. But whatever. It's neither here nor there, right? That's only important when we're looking at this, like, win probability added, average championship leverage, blah, blah, blah. Meh. I mean, that's not going to be so interesting for us. We'll talk about all that stuff later. Its importance is in question, right? The interesting thing about this is that when you look here at the games played, especially at the game number for team, you can see here that there's a gap, and that's the thing that we're interested in, right? So May 1st, DiMaggio plays. He's hitting 400, so they're not going to just like drop him out of the lineup, but then his next game's not until May 7th. And you're like, okay, so what happened? So I went back and I looked at the newspaper, and there was nothing in terms of an injury on May 1st. That's the first thing that I always look for. I'm like, well, did he like split his hand or something like that? No. In fact, the Boston newspapers are talking over and over again about what a great hitter he is, and they're talking about how, you know, Dom DiMaggio is going to make everyone forget about Joe DiMaggio, who was injured at the time, and so on and so forth, right? What happened is I had to look close for this. If I go over to the newspaper here for the next game, so nobody played May 2nd. There were no games scheduled. May 3rd, there was a game that was played, but it wasn't until the May 4th newspaper that we got this. So we're looking through this, right? The actual first page of the sports section was all about the Boston Braves game as they played against, looks like it was Chicago, and the Cubs beat them 4-0, and so, you know, you have all of your like woe is me type reporting. Reason why it wasn't the Red Sox game is because the Red Sox game was called after 14-14 was the score, and there were 13 innings of play. As I mean, this one was just kind of ugly. I'm guessing that this was called, let's see, looking really quick. It was called for darkness. I'm trying to remember if there were lights on in Detroit at the time or not. It's always possible that there were lights, but rules prevented the lights from being used. And so you're looking around here and you're like, okay, we need DiMaggio for the big haul. That's not what we're looking for. It's not what we're looking for. It's right here. It's right in the middle. This is where this is complicated, right? You have to kind of know where you're searching. So the DiMaggio father, Joseph P. DiMaggio, passed away in San Francisco. And because he passed away, Joe, Dom DiMaggio, and Vince DiMaggio all went back to San Francisco to attend the funeral. And so because of that, Dom DiMaggio was on an airplane going back to San Francisco. That's why he didn't play, right? So that's pretty interesting to know, right? This is one of the reasons why it would be really, really helpful if we somehow combined all of our resources and heads and all this stuff and made like an actual transaction database so we could like know this sort of stuff, right? It happened back then. It's interesting. There's an interesting story behind it, right? It came at an interesting part of the season. But, you know, we don't have a very good database of this sort of record. Now, would that have made a difference? Would it have meant that this, 13-inning game would have actually been won by the Red Sox instead of being a 14-14 tie? I don't know. It's possible. It might have happened. It might not have happened. Who knows, right? But it's interesting for those of us who play through these replays to see that, oh, yeah, you have this situation now, and you're going to have somebody else play center field, right? Boston did have Stan Spence play center field in real life as I'm looking at this. In fact, I'll show this to you. They did have Spence play center field, as you can see here with his box score. He went, let's see, 3 for 4 with 2 runs scored. So he played pretty well for a guy who ended up with a batting average of like 200 barely, in the regular season. So it didn't end up being a total loss there, right? If you're talking about replacement level players and all this stuff, I mean, whatever, neither here nor there, right? A lot of that stuff is sort of a rhetorical trick anyway. But it's interesting to think about this when you play through your replay and you come across this type of situation. When you're using a game that does everything automatically, this doesn't come up, right? When you talk about people who are playing Diamond Mine seasons automatically with like greatest teams discs and stuff like that they put together themselves, my question is always, what did you do about transactions? Because if you just let them use players however they wanted to, weird stuff will happen, right? You have to make sure that you have some sort of transaction system in place so that you can realistically recreate this. You can use in-game injuries, but they're not going to be that realistic, right? You can use out-of-the-park in-game injuries, which are better, but they're still not quite realistic enough. It's not quite something that would be just like what you would face in real life. Anyway, a couple of thoughts there about that for you. But yeah, just so you know, early May 1949, Dom DiMaggio missed a couple of games because of his father's funeral. Now you know, and the more you know. I'll talk to you later. Bye.